Thank you, Pete. Good evening, City Club. Hunter Chang, your first VP. It's great to be home again in our newly renovated San Marino Community Center. And welcome Mayor Huang and all the city officials, our new members and guests. So I have the pleasure tonight of introducing our featured speaker, Professor Terry Dobson. Terry moved to the United States from England in 1990, where he earned his MFA from Yale University. In 1991, Terry landed a position with the Walt Disney Company, Imagineering, where he designed the shows, rides, pavilions, and attractions for Disney's theme parks worldwide and online. His first attraction as creative director was a pavilion called Innoventions at Epcot Theme Park. Its success led Disney to appoint Terry creative director for the design of Innovations Pavilion at Disneyland. Terry's success with Innovations led to the project that he describes as the pinnacle of his career with Disney, the Millennium Village Pavilion at Epcot. The attraction ran for 18 months and won the THEMA, which is the equivalent of an Academy Award for the themed entertainment industry, and also inaugurated him into the Disney Hall of Fame. So after a remarkable 20-year career at the happiest place on earth, Terry is enjoying his role today as an APU professor. He also serves as Cub Scout Den leader, along with our very own Dr. Stephen Choi. He lives in San Marino with his wife, who's here tonight, and their 4 sons. And joining him tonight is the Cub Scout mascot, Igor the Parrot. So tonight, Terry's going to share the 10 secret sauce principles behind Disney's success, which highlight the importance of storytelling, visual communication, and maintaining a strong identity and creating a successful user experience. So without further ado, let's give a warm City Club welcome to Terry and Igor.
Thank you, Hunter, for that introduction, and then also all of you for this invitation. Thank you. Oh. All right, Mickey's 10 Commandments. I didn't come up with this. I learned this along the way. As it says there, I was a former creative director for Disney Imagineering. That was my first career. My second career now is as a university professor. So here we go. The most important commandment in theme park design or any design is knowing your audience. And when I first came to California to start work at Disney, I was hired by the man who wrote these 10 Commandments. His name was Marty Sklar. He was the then president for many, many years. And he took me aside and he said to me, Terry, here's my advice. Speak British, think Yiddish. So that's how I knew my audience. Understanding who you're speaking to, it's the most important start to telling stories. But what made Walt Disney so successful was his mastery of entertaining multiple audiences simultaneously. So designing for everybody is very, very difficult, but somehow Disney parks succeed in providing these multi-generational experiences that can be shared together. As Disney park audiences matured, so has their desire for more interactive and personalized experiences. And Disney has always offered personalization, having your Mickey ears embroidered with your name. Then came customization. So now you can go to Tomorrowland and have your own unique custom lightsaber made. But the Holy Grail has always been to integrate both these aspects invisibly and seamlessly and magically. Now, there's a carousel in Griffith Park where Walt Disney used to sit and watch his daughters have fun. And as legend has it, this is where he got the impetus for creating Disneyland. So he was determined to create a place where parents and children could have fun together. And thus, when I joined Disney, my audience too became the family that plays together. So this was my first major attraction as a creative director of a ride. It's and at the center of this attraction, we built the $1 million treehouse of technology that did absolutely nothing. But it looked good. And it turned out to be my longest lasting contribution to theme parks, most of which I'm not proud of. It's in some landfill somewhere now. But this actually lasted the longest of all of them. Even though this is concept art, so this was never meant for public consumption. This was never meant for the public to see. This is just for internally pitching the ideas to the executives, and all the way up at the time it was Michael Eisner, who was the president of Disney. But you can see here that we always tried to inclusively represent everybody. And that's because Disney's audience is everybody. And it's always important for us to keep top of mind this number one principle, this number one commandment, and that is to know your audience. All right, Walt encouraged every Disney Imagineer to visit Disneyland as often as possible. We had to go in through the front entrance, stand in line with everybody else, try to experience those pain points. You know, how hot it is, sun, the tired feet, the crying kids. But it also meant being able to, once again, become a kid. And using your overactive imagination, actually training your ability to willingly suspend your disbelief when somebody else is pitching an idea. It's really hard to come on board with other people's ideas. So, normally, it takes about 15 years as a creative director at Disney before you get the chance to design what's called an e-ticket attraction. So that's one of the big roller coaster rides. So I decided, well, that's a long time. So I focused instead on imagining the future of interactive play. So what little girl wouldn't want to dance like a princess wearing Cinderella's magical glass slippers? Or who wouldn't want to skip down Main Street as a couple holding hands, wearing Mickey and Minnie's haptic feedback shoes? And this intersection of technology and play, and in particularly socially interactive play, that became my specialty as a career creative at Disney for the last 2 decades. But I focused on wearing my guest shoes at play. All right, here we go. This is me up there when I was 4 years old. It's the only other time I ever held a bird. And look, I was already dressed in a cowboy uniform, ready for the California West. I think I knew way back then where I was headed. As a designer, I was always interested in the power of play and in new ways that brought people together. So, some of my sketches up here. What about a teeter-totter for 4 people? How about a razor scooter for 3 people? Disney didn't like that idea. How about a 2-player competitive pinball game? Or a 4-person cooperation game? So this was my area of focus. It was high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech. Just different ways of creating activities at Disneyland to bring people together in social interactivity. Oh, this is, here I am at 6. There, over in the corner. Oh, and that was my first theme park design in my back garden. And that's where I kind of got my start in designing and creating experiences or attractions. So in addition to designing the activities and games, I was always also given the opportunity to create the worlds where these were situated. And so this is, again, Disneyland. This is 1997, inspired by the 4 different lands that Walt had created for the park. And this is where the 3-dimensional centerpiece was the weenie. That's what Walt called them, weenies. These were the icons that drew guests to the heart of the attraction. I think the best part, though, of being an Imagineer was just collaborating with all the awesome artists, world-class writers, engineers, scientists, each one at the top of their game, and collaboratively designing attractions together. So this Millennium Village, a pavilion at Walt Disney World, brought together 50 countries under one roof to celebrate the new millennium. Brazil Up here, they won the World Cup that year. And so you could experience, 100 people could experience football, as they call it in Brazil, playing together simultaneously. Or down here, it was amazing to see children walk in the Florida summer into the Sweden pavilion and realize that that was a real snowman. So this experiential, play is collaborative, play is interactive. When we designed Disney's first massively multiplayer online game, this was called Virtual Magic Kingdom, avatar design, that became very important because play is also inclusive. We needed to celebrate diversity, but also be sensitive to the racial stereotypes. But after focus testing, we were off target, way off target with all of our modern trends. And that's because it was men designing kids' clothing. So we went back and we hired lots of females, lots of female young designers for fashion styling and for the gameplay. And it turns out that hairstyles and clothing and shopping were all very important social aspects, especially for girls in gameplay. I first understood the power of that online play has over our kids when I was creating these. These were the virtual rewards inspired by real objects that you can see and find at Disney theme park attractions. So this is why our kids spend so much time on their iPads now. It's because they want to win these things. And the magical aspect here at Disney was that you could recognize these objects. When you created your own rooms and attractions, you could have, what do we have? Let's see, we can see the teacups, we can see the Madame Leota from the Haunted Mansion, we can see the Cinderella's Sleeping Beauty, we can see all of these different icons. Actually, there's only one thing up here which never made it to the game. Can anybody see which one? Remember, I'll give you a clue. Disney doesn't allow gambling on their cruise ships. So there's one icon up here that didn't make it to the game. If you notice, it's the craps table in the top right. That's the only icon that didn't make it into the final game. Anyway, marketing, Disney marketing, they came to me and said, Terry, we have this great idea. It's called Twinfluence. I'm like, okay, well, what's that? It says, well, we want to market to tweens, but we can't market to them directly. So what we want to do is encourage them to talk to their parents, to influence their parents, to take them to Disneyland. I'm like, wow, that is so nefarious. All right, how do we do that? Well, this is how we did it. These rare items, the rarest items in the game, and the whole economy had to be built, much like, and this is true of any game. You have to build a trajectory, a path to riches, but also a way that the players can build on their experiences. And this was the economy that we built. All of those icons that I showed you, we turned them into trading cards. In 2005, eBay banned the sale of virtual items. So you could no longer exchange them online on eBay. So we got around that by turning them into trading cards. Now, the only way you could get these rare items is if you went to Disneyland. So you played the game at home for free, but if you wanted Aladdin's magic carpet, you had to go to Disneyland and you play a magical quest, and then you get one of these cards on the back. There's a scratch-off code, which when you scratch it off, magically when you get home, just like at the real Disney theme parks, all of your merchandise has been delivered to your room. And so this was the technology that won me a patent for the company. All right, on to our next one. It's number 3. Commandment number 3, organizing the flow of people and ideas. Now, what's the difference between art and design? I have this conversation all the time now with students' parents who are worried about their child receiving a diploma saying degree in art. And so art is all about expressing your creativity, whereas design is about leveraging your creativity. And at Disney, as a theme park designer, it was all about organizing creativity, specifically the flow of people and ideas. So, if the organizing principle is Disneyland, there's a question, what's the subdividing principle? Lands, right? That's where we get the idea. Tomorrowland, Adventureland, Fantasyland, Frontierland. Much same way, Disney, Tokyo Seas. What's the organizing principle? Seas, right? So they're all seas. So, Roller coasters, as we can see here, they're very repeatable as attractions, but they're horrible for telling stories. So, this next commandment, in order to get the significance of this, you really have to imagine or just think about great stories, great design, great experiences. All of them have something in common, whether at Disneyland or not, and that is that they pay the viewer off for the amount of time and effort that you have put into the experience. So a simple example is that FedEx logo. When you see it, and when you see the negative space and the arrow, when you finally see that, it's not pointing backwards, it's pointing forwards. And so that is an example just of a well-executed idea that has perfect unity between form and function. But all ideas start with a tiny spark. And unlike rides, which are a linear experience, Disneyland is completely non-linear. It's interactive. So you choose where you want to go, but every step you're presented with just enough information to make informed decisions. This is Walt's big idea, the idea that started it all at Disneyland. It's called the hub and spoke model. And it was popularized in Disneyland, which opened in 1955, you all know. But then it was replicated all the Disney parks around the world, Florida, Paris, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Shanghai, and become the model for every theme park design master plan. So imagine now, if you will, or in Disney parlance, willingly suspend your disbelief and imagine for a moment, you're walking down Main Street. What do you see? In the distance, there's the castle, signifying the entrance to Fantasyland. Then you reach the hub, where the Walt Disney statue is, and you look around again. If you turn right, you'll see now the Orbitron, which is the icon ushering you into Tomorrowland. It also establishes the aesthetic of what you expect to see there. You look another way and you see, over in Frontierland, you can see Big Thunder Mountain. So this intentional design, it helps guests with their wayfinding in the park and around the park, and enables them to always find their way back to the center. Designing interactive experiences is very similar, but predicting what guests do and organizing the flow of ideas to anticipate their expectations. That's what takes a lot of play testing. Brands. This is point number 4. Walt decided this is what he called them. He said, create weenies. Now, there's 2 urban legends. I'm going to tell you about this story behind the weenie. A weenie is essentially a visual magnet. It's just like the castle I've told you about, the Orbitron. The 2 stories that I've heard. One, weenie is the word for a hot dog, and Walt always noticed that wherever there was a hot dog stand, there was a queue of people. But also, he had a dog called Lady, and after he returned from working on Disneyland every night late, he would walk in and he would grab a hot dog. And he noticed that wherever he walked around the house with that hot dog, the dog would follow him. So that's the idea of the weenies. Now, Walt understand this idea of brands. They're magnetic. And even just being adjacent to Disneyland down in Anaheim, you get this halo effect from local businesses. But from this grew a whole new business segment called experiential marketing, and that has corporate alliance partners. You ever noticed who the sponsor is for the petting zoo over in Frontierland? Brawny paper towel. Makes sense, right? All right, opening day. When Walt Disney opened Disneyland, he promoted it on TV to get people excited. When the crowd started coming, Walt found another way to excite their anticipation and begin the storytelling before they even entered the park. So in 1959, 4 years after it opened, they introduced the Matterhorn, the bobsled ride, and this ushered in a new era of e-ticket mountain attractions. Think of all the mountain attractions. The peak of the Matterhorn could be seen from outside the park, and thus the magic now began while driving south on the 5 freeway. That's when you started to get excited. Disney brands. The logo is often the first touch point a guest will experience with a park attraction. So similarly, this is where the storytelling needs to begin. And as a graphic designer, by training, I began every Disney project with a logo because I could encapsulate the story of the attraction in the logo and also establish the aesthetic all in one. And so that's also the beauty of Disney's parks, these weenies. This is the Tree of Life. It's 145 feet tall. It's adorned with 300 meticulously carved animal carvings, symbolizing the theme of the park, to discover the hidden beauty of animals. In fact, all the Walt Disney World attractions have these visual magnets that draw you from a distance to specific targets in Disney parks. They lead the guests clearly and logically through the experience. All right. Communicate with visual literacy. I looked everywhere for Walt Disney when I was there. I couldn't find it. I looked for these books on visual literacy and I couldn't find any of them. And so I had to make it up as I went along. But this truly is the key. It's storytelling that transcends language, transcends age groups, visual storytelling. Think about color, shape, form, texture. All of these can be significant carriers of meaning. They all come together in the Disney experience. When you move from one land to another, you notice there's a threshold underfoot. It changes from cobblestones to a different texture when you go into Frontierland. So if a picture can speak 1,000 words, a metaphor can speak 1,000 pictures. And Pixar are masters of this. So my favorite film is Ratatouille. Just look at this. It's filled with clever visual metaphors. This is the Anton Ego. He's the grim eater, the food critic. Look at the typewriter. What could you see? What's the shape of his? Can you see a skull? Yeah. All right, check out this one. This is his office. Look at the shape of it. It's a coffin. All right, one more. Pixar characters, they're also so cleverly layered metaphors. Does anybody know who this is? This is Violet from The Incredibles. She's the oldest child of Mr. Incredible. Now, why does she have her hair covering half her face? Well, let's think about what's her superpower? She can be invisible. She can hide. So it's a visual metaphor that is displayed. It foreshadows. And this is the wonder of Disney storytelling. It's filled with these lovely little Easter eggs that you can go back time and time and time again and continue finding more there every time you look. All right, here's a little story I'm going to tell you about visual literacy. When I arrived in Disney in 1991, I suddenly had access to all this technology. I was a student just fresh from Yale. I was the first graduating class that had an Apple Macintosh on my desktop. And when I came to Disney, I was one of the few that could work an Apple Macintosh. Now, Disney had the first, it sounds really old-fashioned to us now, but this had never happened before. I get to plug my Apple Macintosh into a color printer. Boom. I get to plug my Apple Macintosh into a laser cutter. Ooh. So suddenly I have all this technology in the hand of a creative, and I decided I couldn't wait to use my creativity. I'm going to wait 15 years. I'm going to get going now. So I designed an April Fool's joke. What we all know today is a deep fake. All right, so here it is. Anybody know who these guys are? The Sherman Brothers. They are arguably the most successful songwriting duo of all time. They were Walt Disney's staff songwriters. You've heard all of their songs. They drive you nuts at the park. The Enchanted Tiki Room. I'm going to get this guy a side gig down there at some point. It's a Small World, The Carousel of Progress. They also did The Jungle Book, Mary Poppins. And so these two brothers, one of them, Robert, he wrote the lyrics and Richard created the melodies. And so here's the story or myth that I created to see if I could fool the Disney, if I could fool Disney, especially the Disney archivist. I decided I was going to create my own version of this record, supercalifragilistic. And here's the story. One day, while grocery shopping, Robert, who wrote the lyrics, had an epiphany of inspiration, and he wrote the lyrics on the back of his shopping list. which he excitedly shared with his brother to put the melody he had written. Accidentally, Richard read the wrong side and added the list of shopping items to the melody instead. This was evidently the long-lost, unknown origin of the Sherman Brothers' most successful song with the strangest lyric and the longest word in the English language. This is how it came about. This is the fake record sleeve I designed. I was able to print. I'm like, oh, I can print on color copies. I can wonder if I can print on brown paper. Print on brown paper, it makes it look old. All right. So I made the fake, here. I got a 78 RPM record. And remember I said that I could now work a laser cutter. And so I'm like, oh, these have been sent from England, from a little old man. There's a record shop, an antique shop in London. And he's found these in his attic. So I made these fake envelopes, made them look old, and the labels. I got the 78 RPM records. Even the label was burnished on. Everything looked totally legit. I cut the record, or laser cut it, because obviously if anybody played it, it wasn't going to be supercalifragilistic. So this was a very convenient way to have it arrive broken. But still, they needed to test it. And so, by the way, this little man in England, his name was Colin Nosbod, which was Dobson backwards. I printed them out late at night. I stayed at Disney, which was all well and good using the technology until there was an earthquake, and then they had to do a report of everybody that was on the premises. And they were like, what's Terry Dobson doing there at 4 a.m.? So I sent this out the week before, 1st of April, through the Disney interoffice mail. So again, it all seemed totally legitimate. I sent one even to Michael Eisner, the then Disney CEO. And his copy, it turned out, he sent to the Disney archivist to be authenticated. So, like most practical jokes, it's difficult to predict the outcome. But this prank, it definitely ignited my career trajectory because the storytelling communicated through fundamental visual literacy. This is how everybody knew it was me. It was my face all along. All right, we're on to the last 6, or the last 5. But the first half of these commandments are all formative. The second half are all cautionary. And you can tell that they came from lessons learned the hard way. So here's a cautionary tale about Disney's signage. This is all about overload. And Disney are the worst sometimes. I mean, here's some photos from Walt Disney World. Now, Walt Disney World's iconic wayfinding signage was designed by the same company that created the graphics for the last LA Olympics in 1984. And I don't have a problem with the schema that Sussman Frazier, a great design company, came up with, but rather with the brand police at Disney. Take a look at these signage examples. I mean, the one at the bottom, so much Disney. Disney, Disney, Disney. If you're already on Disney property in Orlando, is it really necessary to keep repeating the word Disney to the point of overload and at the expense of both legibility and readability? Because in the end, you don't read anything. On the second one, the big one up there, so much Epcot. If there's Epcot in every direction, it's difficult to decide which is the right one at 55 miles an hour. And then over here, so much wilderness. So much so that my own son, he said, Dad, don't they have any other names? All right. Here's the little story I want to tell you about this. There's a logic to the Disney theme park design schema that helps regulate overload by carefully calculating what we call visual sightlines and avoiding visual intrusion. So this is true of every park, of every area, of every attraction that's designed. It has to work with everything else. So Epcot has something called World Showcase. This is World Showcase. I've heard now that it's closed due to cultural insensitivities, but this was the best place to watch fireworks if you ever went down to Disney World. Partly because of these beautiful vistas, the views across the lagoon. But then in the early 1990s, there were two new resort attractions that opened outside of Epcot. But you got to remember, Florida is so flat the water table is so high you can't dig down, that anything that stands tall you can see for miles. All right, so these two attractions, here they are. The Swan and Dolphin Hotel, which was designed by Michael Graves, a well-known architect, but not a Disney Imagineer, and the Tower of Terror. So both of these new attractions, they were really tall, and they're outside Epcot, but they impacted the park because you can see them from miles away. So this is the Morocco Pavilion, and this was one of them. One of these installations from the park was handled with real care because it dealt with the visual intrusion. The other one didn't. Let's take a look. Which one do you think fits in better? Why would a huge dolphin and this pyramid be sticking out of the top of Morocco? Whereas over here, when they built Tower, now Tower of Terror is in a whole nother park. It's in Hollywood, Disney's Hollywood Studios. And so on the one side, it looks like the Tower of Terror, but on the back side, it has all these arabesque features that make it fit in completely with this Moroccan backdrop. So this is the Disney way of doing it. And this is, again, how we avoid overload in the parks. Aha, the bumper big book of Disney stories. Tell one story at a time. This was, there's so many Disney stories, and the one I'm going to tell you did the exact opposite. We told lots of stories all at the same time, but storytelling's an art, and Disney has become synonymous with storytelling that entertains multi-generational audiences. Design is essentially storytelling. And I didn't know that until I came to Disney, and I used this principle of telling one story at a time through self-promotional devices all along the way, and so that I could finally get my foot in the door at Disney. Here they are. First, when I came to America, I wanted to work in Boston, so I created these little tea chests and sent them on the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party with the message, "The British are coming back." And then Yale is actually the most famous brand of key in England. So when I wanted to get into grad school there, I had these keys, and in the cut of the key, I had MFA, and I sent these out to all of the different students who are the ones that decide on the next cohort. And so this is how I got my foot in the door there. And this worked well, so I tried it again at Disney. And here, this is how I got my job. I sent 10 of these. It says on the outside of the pack, it says to build a better mousetrap. And you pull the little mouse tail, and inside there's a mousetrap. It says, choose the best cheese. And there was some English, Stilton, mature English, export of the UK. All right, so these are self-promotional devices that I created, telling one story at a time, designed to show people my creative potential, each handcrafted, aimed to trigger a smile in the mind of the recipient, witty messages with clever concepts, enjoyable to open, but really hard to throw away. I would go into people's offices 10 years after I started at Disney and still see these on the shelf. And so again, there's a place still for snail mail in our society today. We just have to creatively figure out how to use it. All right, so here it is. This was the very best time of my entire creative career, was when I got to tell the stories of the crown jewel attractions, right? All of these characters were able to come together. Walt Disney's brother, Roy, he was the keeper of the brand. And up until he died, we weren't allowed to mix the mythologies. You couldn't have Mickey Mouse, Captain Hook, Cinderella. You couldn't have them in the same property. They couldn't be in the same intellectual property together. But when it became digital, when we had all of this access to all of these different characters, suddenly we could allow them to live together. And so I'd seen back in England growing up, I grew up with the Batman TV show, and there was this one Batman episode where all the villains ganged up against Batman. I'm like, wouldn't it be great if all the villains ganged up in Disneyland? All the villains got together, they ransacked the whole park, turned everything upside down, and you have one night to right the wrongs, ride the rides, and put Disneyland back together. Otherwise, when the guests arrive in the morning, it's going to be the unhappiest place on earth. So Disney Interactive was a new division at the time. Just started up. Every Hollywood studio started an interactive division. The medium was CD-ROM. We were like, oh, this is it. This is the future. And they said to me, have you ever designed a game? I said, well, I did when I was back in England, a little backyard theme park. Oh, okay, yes, good enough, you're in. Come and design a game. So I got into game design, and this was the story. This is Captain Hook. Look, he's found the magic storybook, and he's ripping out all the happy endings to the stories. One by one, when Snow White, when she bites into that poison apple. The end. She's dead. Pinocchio, look, he's been pushed off the end. I mean, he's being led into Pleasure Island by Foul Fox and Gideon the cat. He never returns. Peter Pan, he's forced off of the plank into the jaws of TikTok. He gets chomped, he's done. So this is the story, the setup. And the only problem was that when we released this, because it was CD-ROM, we told one story at a time. We released the first one, and it took so long that the technology had overtaken it, and the internet came along, and at the time we're like, no, we'll never be able to deliver streaming content that's any good. And of course, we were wrong. And CD-ROMs all disappeared, and so did this product. It died. All right, audience participation time. What's this? Shout out. What is it, though? If I say magic mirror, 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 what are you going to say? So where's this supposed to be? Isn't it magic mirror on the pedestal? Isn't it? I thought it was magic mirror on the pedestal. No? All right, avoid contradiction. This is the next one. All right. Who remembers the early Snow White ride at Disneyland when it first opened? What was unique about this Snow White? Who remembers? Anybody? Here it is. Look, you could ride in the cars, and they were named after the dwarves. But what was different about this one ride? Different from all the other dark rides in Fantasyland? Anybody? Snow White was missing. Yeah. So imagine this, design the ride so that guests assumed the viewpoint of the main character, Snow White. But few people understood this concept and really just like wondered, where's Snow White? Why is she not in the ride? So they wanted to see the characters, not be them. They wanted to see them. So Walt learned this lesson from that contradiction, and the ride has now been redesigned to be like the other third person. All the other rides are dark rides are like that. And so this was one of the contradictions. But let's look at another one. This is actually one more example here. So please raise your hand as soon as you see what I see. All right? I think this is the worst mistake that Disney ever made. You ready? Yeah, right? What should it be? It doesn't make any sense, does it? I love finding these examples. All right. Everybody get it? It's the Queen of Hearts. It's yeah. All right, good. All right, avoid contradiction. All right, we've got a few more here. 2 more to go. So this is the fun equation. There is an equation. Walt Disney, he once stated, you can educate people, just don't tell them you're doing it. Make it fun. So for every ounce of treatment, you need to add a ton of treat. There's also an unofficial equation, fun equation as well. I'll tell you this one. It says, fear minus death equals fun. That's the unofficial Disney equation. All right. So I was hired to work on Epcot, to update Epcot. Epcot was the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. It's called, we knew it as the Brussels sprouts of Disney. Hard to swallow, but you knew it was good for you. All right. So, and there's even a Simpsons episode where they visit. Has anybody seen this? Homer's looking down from the plane, and he even laments. He goes, "Oh, it even looks boring from up here." Disney doesn't like spending its own money. They don't. So they solicit corporate alliance partners who oftentimes want so much marketing hyperbole shoved in that it's difficult to tell a well-balanced story. So, for the New York World's Fair in 1964, the Imagineers came up with a whole new ride system to tell the story about the impact of electrical products in the home. Anybody know what the attraction was called? Carousel of Progress. But this partnership was actually a really big success story for Disney because there he is convincing the chairman of GE at the time to only feature the GE products in one scene out of the 4 scenes. All right? So this idea of ounce of treatment, ton of treat, Walt knew. You don't want to, again, if you just put it all about selling the product, nobody's going to be interested. So instead, he created a show where 3/4 of it was story, and in the last one, you just show the futuristic products that GE is coming out with in the future. I love these old information graphics I found when I was rummaging around in that Walt Disney one day, because they're historical artifacts that give legitimacy to Walt's storytelling prowess in themed entertainment, and his belief that a spoonful of sugar helps that medicine go down. All right, the last. Here we are. We finally arrived. The last one of the commandments. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Keep reapplying the cycle that works. This is true of any aspect of design, not just theme parks. Look, here's Walt Disney picking up the litter. Disney parks are so clean, aren't they? They really are. I mean, you just know it every step of the way. Those spotless sidewalks, the walkways and the streets, that's no accident. I've watched guests holding trash in their hand looking for a trash can. Do you think that happens on the outside world? That's just going to go on the floor. So maintaining the upkeep of the Disney parks provides a wonderful opportunity and example to pass on to our children. We know in our hearts that it's the right thing to do, but I can't imagine finding any such significant life lesson to pass on to my kids at Magic Mountain, or even through Roblox. But more importantly, however, whether you're designing a Disney attraction or if you're a YouTuber, you have to maintain it. You've got to keep it up. You've got to be prolific. If you don't post on YouTube every day, you're never going to build your audience. Similarly, Disneyland makes no money on the cost of admission. That entry fee to get in, that they just break even. They make their money on repeat visitation. Food, merchandise, hotel occupancy. That's where they make the money. So if Disney didn't keep it up, there wouldn't be as many annual pass holders that were coming back time and time again to spend their money. So here's the 10. Here they are for you. But because my job, what I teach now at APU, is this. I turn words into pictures. So this is all generated using AI. This is all DALL-E. This was all done this weekend. And this is the train has left the station with this. It's in every aspect, in every program now. It's such an amazing tool. It's a great time to be a designer because suddenly we have the power of image making at our fingertips. So thank you for listening tonight. Igor, do you want to say anything? I'm happy to answer any questions, but yeah, thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Terry. Anybody have any questions for Terry? Robert?
Just a question, you talk about these design principles. How, you teach design to university students. Are the design principles that Disney promulgates, are those kind of similar to just general design principles?
What's interesting?
Or is it specific to Disney?
No, what's interesting is that I now read about, I'll come over here. just how important these are now to UX design. UX design is user experience design, and it grew out of the origins here. I was first a show designer, making shows, then a concept designer, creating ideas, then an art director. Aspects of that design at Disney is pretty manipulative. It is. But again, what I try to do now is bring all of those techniques to my students and now turn them upside down and use. So it was a great training ground to be able to say, wait a minute, design's got us into a lot of problems, design needs to get us out of those problems. And so that's what we focus on.
Right? Marilyn.
Do you teach design now at the university? Is that what you're doing?
I do, yes.
Oh.
So I teach, we have an undergraduate program, and now we have a graduate program. And as I said, design, it's a really, honestly, it's a great time now to be a designer. It really is. For the last 10 years, design has been in a strange place because I didn't know whether to guide my students to become animators or 3D modelers or motion graphic designers. And now we don't have to do any of that. We just come back to teaching the basics. It's what we went over here, this idea of fundamental visual literacy. We all learn to read and write, but not many of us go on to be professional writers. But you use that skill, those skills every single day. The same is true of fundamental visual literacy. Once you learn it, you're able to apply it. And so that's what we now focus on. But AI has really changed everything. And now it's brought, when I was at Disney, I had to hire an artist to create my work. I mean, all of these images I showed you up here, they were created by teams of people. And again, this is, from a design standpoint, now it's brought that back at my fingertips. So,
Kelly.
How did you get Dali to spell? Because it's terrible.
Repeat the question, Terry.
Yeah. So the AI is really, they call it hallucinations. I think that's what the term it is. And so you have to check like the number of fingers on people because it's really infamous. The number of times put 6 fingers and so. But this latest one, this DALL-E is, if everybody has heard of ChatGPT, it's the version, it's the same company. So we pay it's just a small subscription every month, and now you have access to this incredible resource. I mean, I would spend hours looking for images, the right image. Now I can create the right image to tell the story. And so we need to be teaching our kids this tool. They do. They need to know it. Otherwise they're going to be left behind. Yes?
But that's the best spelling I've ever seen on any one of those.
I found out that it's learning. Like for instance, you know the first slide I showed you dozens of examples where it took me to get to that first image? Literally, it took 15 tries. And every time though, it got a little bit better and it learned what I want. So you have to be patient with it, and it eventually, I'm just amazed what it can create. But I'm describing the lighting, the coloring, the POV, the camera angle, all of that, and you encapsulate as brief as possible to be able to kind of, but it's in it, rather than drawing it, you're writing it. Yeah.
Seal?
What is your bird's name and how?
Thank you, yeah. I have learned a lot about my parenting from my parroting. His name's Igor. He came with a name. He was a reject initially. We got him from the pet store. He was a return. They said he's too loud. He bites too much. He doesn't like kids. So he's our Cub Scout pack mascot now. He'll go to everybody. He loves everybody except my kids. He's jealous of my kids. So, yeah, but he's a sweet. He's only 5 years old, but he's such a sweetie. Yeah. He's been to a funeral, he's been to a wedding, he's been to the dentist. I mean, I don't push him in any situation, but COVID was great because everybody had sterile wipes everywhere so we can clean up. But honestly, he's so social and he wants to be around. For the last 2 years, he came to school with me every day and the students loved it. He has the best attendance, always. He's my unofficial assistant, unpaid of course, but I mean, what a great icebreaker. The students come, I teach freshman first year seminar, so in September 1st, they walk into campus the first day and there's Professor Terry with a parrot and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Did he say anything?
You know what? It's not on cue, right? But he's super loquacious, yeah. Yeah, the thing he loves most is after I wash him, I get the hairdryer, and then he'll start talking. He won't stop. But yeah, he does tricks, so. We're outside Valentine Elementary most mornings, just welcoming the kids, and so he's super sweet. Thank you, everybody.
Igor, could you bring Terry back up here, please? Terry, thank you so much, and you, Igor, for a great presentation tonight. Fun. We grew up with Disneyland, right? A bunch of us did. Some of you didn't. I did. Very cool. Thank you so much, and on behalf of City Club, please accept a small token for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for the invitation.
Thanks, Igor, for bringing Terry tonight. I have to ask you, too, Jungle Book, Bagheera. I'm thinking about a pet, maybe for City Club, for me. How many of you know who Bagheera is? Come on. I know some of you guys do. Help, help! Terry, who is that? Jungle Book.
Yeah.
The Black Panther? I have a Black Panther at home, but I don't think he'd sit on my shoulder. So you're in luck. All right, that kind of brings our meeting to an end tonight. I want to remind you all that we have a couple of events coming up. One at the Fiesta is typically our normal third Tuesday of the month. We couldn't get into the Old Mill that, so we moved it up a week. So it is the second Tuesday in June, the 11th. And then, of course, the 4th of July is whatever it is. Can't forget that one, right? So that's the pavilion at Lacey Park. So thank you all for coming tonight, enjoying Disneyland with us, and having a little fun, and have a great evening. Enjoy.